So, so thanks everyone for joining today. My name is Sarah Ball, and I'm a senior strategy advisor in the open research team. So, leading on the implementation of the open access policy. And I'd like to introduce my colleagues that are joining me today. So, firstly, I'll hand over to Tahir.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tahir Zaidi, and I'm a Senior Strategy Advisor in the Open Research team working on the implementation of the Open Access Policy.
And Emma.
Morning, everyone. My name is Emma Devine, and I'm also a Senior Strategy Advisor in the Open Research team working on the implementation of the policy.
Lovely, thank you. So just to share some housekeeping rules quickly. So the Q&A function is enabled in this webinar, and that will be moderated by me and the team. So if you do have any questions that come up when you're listening, please put those in there. And we have a Q&A session at the end. So participants can only see the questions that have been answered, and any unanswered questions will be answered after the event. So we make a commitment to publish those on our website. And finally, the chat function is enabled but not being monitored by the team. So feel free to use that, but we won't be looking at the chat. So this webinar is to go through to demonstrate the stage 2 process for our long form open access funding opportunity. And this is one of 2 webinars that we're holding for research organisations, for the open access staff within those research organisations to share with you the process, the form for the stage 2 submission process. So this is the second webinar. We held the first webinar last week, and as you are probably aware, the stage 2 opened on Monday of this week. So the stage 2 application form has been created to allow research organisations to provide confirmation of publication to UKRI, and so to enable us to release the funds. This webinar is not to provide a general information or updates on the long form policy, and we did actually have a dedicated webinar for that on the 8th of November last year, and that recording and the answers to any unanswered questions are now on our website. So please see that if that's helpful. This webinar is being recorded and it will be published on our website, and that will be published very soon after this webinar. And we'll also, as I say, we have the Q&A, and any unanswered questions will also be published alongside this webinar. So I think after all that, we can move to slides. So just working out screens. So just to run through quickly the agenda for today. So we've just gone through a welcome and introductions. We'll have a few slides for introductions as well, and then we'll have a demonstration of the funding service, a walk through that with the slides, and then after that we will have a Q&A. We might not need the full hour, so we might be able to finish a little bit early depending on how many questions come through. So just as a bit of context then, so the policy for monographs, book chapters and edited collections went live on the 1st of January 2024, and that applies to any of those publications that acknowledge UKRI funding. And it means that they must be made available open access within 12 months of publication, and any Creative Commons license is permitted. And we recognise this 2 routes that can be achieved. So version of record, and this is on the publisher's website or a publishing platform, and also authors accepted manuscript. So that's within an institutional or a subject repository. So as you may be aware, UKRI are implementing a phased approach for the long form policy. And this is sort of recognising that it's an entirely new policy. And so for the first 9 months, so up until September, we're kind of recognising that there'll be a bedding in period for research organisations. So during this phase, we do expect that research organisations will be implementing the policy, and we will be looking at how that is working, but UKRI won't be looking at compliance during that period. So we have put together quite a few guidance and resources on our website. This is UKRI, as well as working with other stakeholders. So hopefully there's some useful resources and guidance for authors and research organisations to follow the policy. And just to highlight one of these really is we had a demonstration of our stage 1 application process. So the links there and the Q&A for that is available on our website as well. So this webinar is dealing with stage 2, and we did a demonstration of stage 1 late last year when that opened up. And for this slide, I'm handing over to Emma, who's going to talk about our new process for notifying on exemptions and trade books not published open access. So Emma.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, so we have recently launched a online form which organisations or authors can use to notify us where they've applied an exemption to a publication or where trade books are not published open access. As a reminder, we don't ask that you seek UKRI's approval before you use an exemption, but we do ask that you notify us once an exemption has been applied. This is an online form, which is using Citizen Space, which is the same system that we used for the stage 1 form. And as I said, we don't have any preference as to who completes this form. It can be completed by authors or by their organisations, but we only need one entry per exemption. And as I said, the form can also be used to inform UKRI when a trade book acknowledging UKRI isn't published open access. There are links to this form from our website, and they'll also be in the slides, which we'll share after this webinar. And we will also be publishing a PDF version of the form so that you can see what that looks like before you click into the system. And that will be on the same page as the guidance documents that we've published for stage 1 and stage 2. And I think I can hand over to Tahir.
Thank you very much, Emma and Sarah. So when it comes to the funding for open access, UKRI is providing £3.5 million per annum by a dedicated fund for the long form aspect of the policy. So this fund is only for publications that are in scope of the open access policy. These are monographs, book chapters and edited collections that are required to acknowledge UKRI funding. And in order to be eligible for the fund, the publications must be available open access immediately with a Creative Commons license. So there's a nuance there that differentiates from the routes to compliance, which allow up to 12 months delay. Whereas when it comes to the use of the fund, we do require immediate open access. The fund is centrally held and any UK-based research organisation can apply. And as Sarah mentioned, the fund, the stage 2 opened on the 15th of January, so Monday of this week. We do have a 7-year threshold, and the 7-year threshold applies to the date of publication, so when the publication reaches stage 2. So what we have determined is that we would expect that we would not consider a publication that is published more than 7 years after the formal end of the UKRI grant to be eligible for the fund, and therefore we would not expect it to be open access. We will be flexible, and we recognise that there are extenuating circumstances. For example, there might be EDI concerns, or there might be issues that result in the production line that cause delays in the publication. So we will have some flexibility around that as well. Now, what can the fund itself be used for? We want to support lots of different models that can support open access to the immediate version with immediate version of record with a Creative Commons license. But we are applying maximum funding limits to the charges that we would pay. So for book processing charges, this would be up to £10,000 inclusive of VAT. For chapter processing charges, it would be £1,000 inclusive of VAT. And then for non-BPC models known as Diamond, non-BPC, alternative, collective models, subscribe to Open, etc. For those, we would support up to £6,000 for the first output and an additional £3,000 if 2 or more UKRI funded outputs are being made open access under the same collection over the same period. Just to flag that all the costs are inclusive of VAT, but we are also aware that some Diamond models do not incur a VAT charge. We are also supporting costs for third-party materials via this fund for entire monographs and edited collections. The primary mechanism by which UKRI supports third-party costs is via grant applications. via grant funds, sorry. But we recognise that sometimes authors may not realise the extent of the costs involved until they are actually producing the monograph or edited collection. So you may claim up to £2,000 from within those the maximum limits to clear those rights if needed. And now I will hand over to Emma to run through the fund process.
Thanks, so again, just to reiterate, the process for claiming funds for long form publications has 2 stages. So at stage 1, this is where the research organisation registers an output with UKRI for funding. We process that and we'll confirm to you whether, from the information that you've provided, that the output is eligible for support. We don't anticipate, and we certainly haven't seen many applications coming in where things are not eligible for support. In those cases, it would be that something is either out of scope of the open access policy, or it's in scope of the policy, but for research articles, in which case it could be supported by the open access block grant to institutions. And the reason that we have stage 1 is that organisations wanted some kind of assurance before signing contracts that a publication would be eligible for support from the Ring Fence Fund. And then following stage 1, stage 2 is where you as an organisation supply evidence to us that the publication is available open access and provide the details that we need in order to set up the payment to you. We process that information and then release funds. So stage 2 is really that you're sending us that final confirmation that the publication has been published in a compliant way, is available open access, and that will enable us to release the funds. And as we've said, in both the stage 1 and the stage 2 processes have been set up so that you can use them to submit information for a single publication or for multiple publications, depending on what works best for your own workflows. Just moving on. So in order to process the payments, we are going to have to set up some notional deadlines. We will be awarding funds biannually, so twice a year in June and December. And that will be in alignment with the EPSRC pay runs. So for 2024, it means that we do have to have a sort of notional internal deadline up to which we process applications received so that we can get these grants set up in time to meet the pay runs. And so for June 2020, so that we can pay things in the June 2024 pay run, that means we'll process all applications received up to and including the 15th of April 2024. And for applications to be paid in the December pay run, we'll process all applications received from the 16th of April 2024 up to and including the 14th of October 2024. We have published these dates on our website, and we will publish future dates as well, but we'll aim to keep them to these times each year so that to help with your own internal processing. This doesn't have any impact on your ability to submit applications to stage 2. We have the equivalent of what used to be called an open call, so the call will remain open. The deadlines are internal, so you can continue submitting stage applications to the funding service at any point on these dates, after these dates, during these dates. That's fine. So to give you an idea of the payment process, what I will stress at the moment is that although you are submitting your applications through the funding service, which is our new service, which is being rolled out across UKRI to replace GES, for at least the first payment, we will be making that through GES, simply because TFS is still in development. So these steps that we're showing here really reflect the current process for a grant. These payments are going to be made as grants. So as I said, we'll have the notional closing date on the 15th of April, and we'll process all applications received up to and including that date. We will carry out the checks on the applications and we'll set up the grants on the system. Once we've done that, we will issue the grant offer documents to organisations, and we're aiming that this will happen in May 2024. We don't know the exact date yet, but it will be May. In order to get these grants live and in order for them to feature in the next pay run, as an organisation, you will have to accept the offer. And once you've accepted the offer, that will then trigger the system to send a start confirmation document to you. And you'll have to send that back to us with a start date. And that then triggers the grant to become active and feature in the next pay run. And if all this goes to plan, then the payment will be made in the June pay run. Again, these will be treated as normal grants. We aren't asking for any additional reporting on these, so nothing like the old spreadsheet that we used to have for the block grants or anything like that. But there is a requirement for a final expenditure statement on a grant. This will be issued once the grant has closed, and we'll aim to close the grants in July 2024. You will have the standard 3 months to return the final expenditure statement, but it should be very, very simple to do this. All of the funding will be issued under a single fund heading, and it literally will just be a case of you putting in the figure that you've received and sending this back to us. We appreciate this is quite bureaucratic. This is the way the system works at the moment, but we hope as TFS develops, we can build something that's a little bit more bespoke and reflects the process that we have set up for the stage 2 payments. If for whatever reason the grant doesn't become active in time to be picked up for the June pay run, then that payment will be made in the next available pay run, which is September. And what we've done on the second row here is just spelt out the process for the notional closing date in October for the payment in December. We aren't entirely sure at the moment whether this will be through TFS or GES, but we will keep everyone informed if anything changes. Tahir, I think that's everything.
Yes, I believe it is. I will stop sharing my screen and go into the TFS system to do the walkthrough. Okay, so to access stage 2, you must go to the funding finder. The funding finder is where on our website, UKRI issues all available funding opportunities. You can see here that the total fund is £3.5 million. This is per annum. The system does require some closing deadlines. So at the moment, this is set at for the 27th of March, 2025. But this is because the system is, as Emma mentioned, in development. And we will continue to iterate with the development teams as it develops further. If you go onto the funding finder website, you'll be able to find lots of information about the fund and the opportunity. It also includes information around the questions. So all of this information is available here and is on our website at the moment. When you click Start Application, you will be taken to this page that asks you to confirm if you will be leading this project if your application is successful. This page is there because the main function of UKRI is to issue research grants, and therefore the language that is reflected in some of the default pages is aimed at principal investigators or fellows who usually apply for UKRI funding. So what you as the open access lead need to do when faced with this page is to simply click confirm, tick check confirm here, and click confirm and continue. When you do that, you will be taken to a sign-in page and asked to confirm if you have a UKRI Funding Service account. If you do, you simply click yes, I want to sign in, and if not, you can create an account. If you click sign in, you'll be taken to this page where you must enter your email address and password. And when you sign in, you will be taken to the application overview page. This is the landing page of the application form for the funding service. And there are 3 sections that you would need to complete. The first of this is application details. The second is the core team. And the third is publications. And I will go through each of these in order. So application details. This is a default section and it exists for research grants. So the reason for including this is because it is necessary for all funding applications. So all we ask you to do here is to enter your organization name, the month and year that you are submitting your application to UKRI. If you're submitting more than 1 application in a month, we simply say ask that you say which number that application is. So for example, if it's the 2nd application, you would simply say University of X, September 2023 2. And then we know that's the 2nd application. And we also ask for a summary. In the summary, all we are looking for is the total number of publications that are being included in this application. that you are submitting to UKRI. And you can also include information such as if you are requesting a cost for third-party materials, and you can also provide any information about any additional information that you would like to include about publication here. In the summary guidance, we do give you a link to guidance on UKRI's Open Access Fund for long-form publications, and this includes PDF documentation on what the form looks like and all the guidance as well. So you don't have to sign into the funding service in order to see what all the questions are and the guidance surrounding the different sections. The second section is the core team section, and this is where you would enter who the project lead is, and if you require any if the administrative contact for your organization is going to be different, we ask you to add them as professional enabling staff. So as Emma mentioned earlier in the presentation, that we will be awarding funds via grants. In order to award funds via grants, we require a named individual who would receive that grant and hold and manage that grant at the research organization. What we are asking for is, if that person is not the person who is completing the application, who would be the project lead, that you ask them, add them as the professional enabling staff. And the information that you would need to provide to add them as professional enabling staff would be their name, email address, and their research organization, which should be the same research organization as the applicant. And then the final section that you would need to complete is that on publication. So we ask you to list the monographs, edited collections, and book chapters that your organization is claiming funds for from UKRI. And we provide guidance on how to do this. So you would need to download and complete the Stage 2 Table of Questions document, copy and paste it into the free text box here below, and you would need to upload the PDFs containing all the invoices for all the publications that are included in this application. When you open this link, you'll be taken to this page, which is the guidance for open access funding. And the Stage 2 Table of Questions document is this Excel spreadsheet here. Let me just open up the Excel sheet. So this is the template that you are asked to complete. I will clarify that the reason we ask for you to complete this offline form and then copy and paste it into the system is because the funding service can only accept PDFs. And in order to be able to manage the applications and the different for the different various publications that would come in, we would not be able to work from PDF form. As a result, you would need to copy and paste the text in. Now, I will go through in turn on the fields that we require you to complete in the Table of Questions document. The first is your Stage 1 reference. This is the reference number that is generated by Citizen Space when you submit your application to UKRI, and it will be used, and UKRI will share that reference with you when we share our response to you for your Stage 1 application. We also ask that you provide the UKRI funding reference that that publication is acknowledging. So just to go back to the presentation earlier, I mentioned that publications that are in scope of the policy are those that are required to acknowledge UKRI funding. We will be looking to see if the UKRI funding has been acknowledged in that publication, and we would expect to see the reference number that is provided here in that version of record. We ask you to specify the publication type, and there is a drop down here, so you can select monograph, book chapter, edited collection, or trade book. We ask for the author names and the title of the publication. So this would be the title of the monograph, the book chapter, or the edited collection. If you are claiming funds for a book chapter, we would like the name of the edited collection that the book chapter is published in as well. We ask for the name of the publisher, and we ask for the date of publication. We cannot release funds until we know that the open access version exists. And the way that we will check for that is via the URL to the open access version. So we ask that you supply this to us so that when we do our checks, we can click on that link, we can check that the open access version is available. It is the version of record. It was made available immediately open access, and it's been published with a Creative Commons license. We are requesting some metadata information, but this is optional. So for example, if the UKRI funded author has an ORCID ID, we would ask you that you include that here. This is not mandatory. We do ask for ISBNs to help with our tracking. And this would be the ISBN for the final published of the open access version. We recognize that ISBNs, different ISBNs may be issued for different formats of the same publication. We also ask for a publication identifier if it has been issued one, for example, a digital object identifier, but this is optional. And we also ask that the research organization that's submitting the application to UKRI confirms that this is the only claim for that publication. So we're not receiving duplicate claims from all the organizations of all co-authors for a publication. We ask that you confirm the open access costs that you are requesting from UKRI, and this would be the figure. This has to be within the maximum funding limits that UKRI will allow. And we do provide you a field for total open access costs as well. So if you wish to share those with us, you can do so. We ask you to clarify the type of open access charge. This could be the book processing charge, a chapter processing charge, or it could be an alternative open access model. The alternative open access model dropdown is a catch-all term for all diamond models or all models that do not charge a book processing charge to the author. And we do also require a URL to the web page, the publisher's web page for that alternative open access model. This is because it will help us reconcile the invoices that you submit to us, because we recognize that for book processing charges, there will be a clear invoice that lists that publication, whereas for alternative open access models, that might not be the case. So we would need to see some information about what that open access model is in order to be able to reconcile those invoices. At stage 2, you are able to claim costs for third-party materials. And so at column S, we ask S and T, we are give you an opportunity to include that information. So at column S, you are asked, are you claiming costs for third-party material content included in this publication? And there's a drop-down, and you simply select yes or no as appropriate. And then in column T, we ask you to provide the total cost that you are requesting from UKRI for clearing those third-party costs. And then at column U, we ask for the total costs that are requested from UKRI. So this would be the total. This would be the sum of the open access costs that you are claiming from UKRI and the amount that you are requesting for clearing third-party clearing rights to third-party content. Finally, we ask if you were the grant holding organization that held the grant that you have, that the publication acknowledges, and if you are not the grant holding organization, to specify who that was. What you answer in columns V and W does not impact on the funds being awarded. This is simply there for funding assurance. And those are all the fields that you would be asked to populate. There is an instructions tab here, where you would be able to see exactly the information that UKRI is requesting for each field. Now, to go back to the TFS form, in the public, so you would be able to populate the Excel file and copy and paste that into the publications field here. You have up to 10,000 words that you can populate here. This is because the system requires a maximum word count. And you also must include all the invoices, and that was via the file upload section here. You can simply choose the file. We do, the system can only accept files that are up to 8 megabytes in size. And that is how you populate that section. Now, you can, once you've populated, once you've completed all of the sections, you can get a read application view. And this is the view that UKRI will receive when you have submitted your application. So this is what my colleagues and I will see. And I've just included some dummy text here. So for example, University of X is submitting in March 2024, 2 book chapters and 1 monograph. and they've just included some information about a diamond model and that they are requesting costs for third-party materials. They've included the core team here. That includes a project lead and a professional enabling staff who would serve as the administrative contact. And they've included all the different publications that they're requesting costs for. And this is how the Excel spreadsheet will copy across into the system. And you are able to scroll across using this bar here to see how it all appears. And once you, I'll just stop sharing my screen. Once you submit the application, it will go to the research office. That is because that is part of the default system by which applications are submitted to UKRI, and it is the research office who will be completing that application. After you've submitted the application, UKRI will review the application, and on the funding finder page that I shared at the start, it includes information of how we will be assessing the application as well and the process that we will take. Thank you very much. I think that concludes the walkthrough of the stage 2 process.
Thanks very much, Tahir. So now we are going to move on to the Q&A session, and we've had quite a few questions submitted so far into the webinar. Emma has been sort of busily typing away and answering quite a lot of those questions. So if people find it useful, please go to the sort of Q&A tab and you can see quite a lot of them have been answered. I guess just to sort of summarize what things have come up. So there's some things around trade books. So why do we need to report those? What do we need to report around trade books? And there's some questions around the sort of the fund overall, and what if the money runs out? So just to clarify, there isn't any competition for this fund, and UKRI is going to monitor that, so that shouldn't be a concern for people. There's some questions around requesting funds for third party and how that happens. There's quite a few questions around the TFS accounts, and who in the university or the research organisation needs to have that. What are the roles of the research office versus the library, and so on. Some questions around multiple outputs in the pay run and how they can be identified, and some other question around the funding reference in the stage 2 form, and what happens if we have multiple grants for that. So if you think any of those sort of questions you'd find useful to see the answer, please look at the Q&A tab. We also had some questions submitted to us before the webinar, so I think I'm going to hand over to Tahir and Emma to run through those as well, and then we'll also look at some others that have come in during the webinar. So I don't know, Tahir or Emma, do you want to kick off with some of those questions that came in early?
Thanks very much, Sarah. Yeah, we've got a question around what documents should research organisations keep for auditing and reporting purposes? And I wonder if Emma might be able to take that one.
Sorry, Tara, I missed that one. Could you just repeat the question?
What documents should research organisations keep for auditing and reporting purposes?
Yeah, thank you. In general, we would recommend that you keep the same kind of documents that you would keep for any grant. So receipts, evidence of payment. That's the kind of thing that you would need to keep. Obviously, you're submitting the invoices to us as part of the stage 2 application, but we recommend that you keep those just in case they're looked at by funding assurance.
Thanks very much, Emma. We had another one at registration, which, that is, what are the criteria for approval? So I can take that one. Once you've submitted a stage 2 application, as our part of our assessment process at UKRI, we will confirm that the publication is available open access. So this is where we would check that it is compliant with the open access policy. So it must be available open access immediately from the date of publication. It must be available with the Creative Commons license, and there must be a UKRI funding acknowledgement in that publication as well. We will also double check to make sure that the information provided at stage 1 matches up. So for example, we ask who the UKRI funded authors are at stage 1. So we would expect to see that same authors appear, the same author appearing in the stage 2 publication, because if the UKRI funded author is no longer associated with that publication, that publication is technically no longer in scope of the policy. We will also do financial checks. So this is where we would check the invoices that have been submitted to UKRI, and we'll make sure that those numbers tally up in order to award the funds.
Thanks, Tahir. We've had a question, can you add generic team email as a professional enabling staff member? In theory, yes. But as we've answered a couple of the other questions, this should be something that you check with your research office to make sure that they're happy for you to do this.
I think that covers most of the questions that we had received for registration. So I think, Sarah, over to you for the live ones.
Yeah, great. Slightly well, it is related obviously, but yeah, there was a question around researchfish submissions and if these outputs are going to have their own section, which is an interesting question that I don't exactly know the answer to. I mean, I do know that when we look at researchfish now for our, when we're trying to monitor these outputs, that we can identify them. So my initial reaction is that I don't think we would need to do anything to researchfish. Obviously, researchfish is used for other purposes other than open access, so that might be something that we have to sort of go back and confirm in our answers. Yeah, for when we get back alongside this webinar. So yeah, we can come back with a clearer answer on that question. There's another question around the form. So in the author names field, should we submit the author names just from our institution or all co-authors if they also come from other institutions? So Tahir, are you the right person to direct that one to?
Yes, I'm happy to take that one. So we are mostly interested in who the UKRI funded researcher is. So we do provide some guidance in the instructions tab that if there are quite a lot of researchers that are authors who are affiliated with the publication, please make sure that you include the UKRI funded researcher and say et al. And the lead author, for example.
Great, thank you. And then there was just another question, I guess, clarifying the process. So does the form go to research office before you make the assessment or just afterwards once you're awarding the grant? Emma?
Yeah, so when an application is submitted to UKRI, typically it's a PI making the application, and they always submit it to their research office. So when you press the submission button, it doesn't actually come directly to UKRI. It goes to your research office, they check the application, and then they press the final button to send something to UKRI. So it will go to your research office first, who will then submit it to UKRI. And I believe that the research office is then copied into any additional communications about the award going forwards.
Thanks, Emma. So we've had a question around the 7-year threshold for funding and whether research organisations should be checking if researchers who received funding after 2016 are planning new long-form outputs arising from their funding in order for research organisations to prepare for stage 1 application. Tahir, do you want to take that one?
Yes, happy to take that one. So this would depend on whether the publication has already been contracted or whether the contract has not been signed yet. This is because in our policy we have an exemption if a publication was signed, a publication was contracted before the start of the policy, which is the 1st of January 2024. And if that contract doesn't permit open access, then there is an exemption for those publications. However, if a researcher has not signed any contract and they are planning on publishing, we would encourage them very much to get in touch with their research organization to discuss open access and make sure that they would be complying with the policy because the policy would apply to them.
Great, thank you. We've had another question which might be a bit technical. I'm not sure if we'll know the answer, but can the form be saved without cookies? So if a team are working together with a generic account, can they go in and out, especially if someone is off sick, for example? I don't know if either Emma or Tahir know the answer to that, or if that's something we might need to follow up with.
So this is slightly different in that with TFS you are logging into an account.
Okay.
So assuming that you've got a generic email address and you share your email address, your password, then anyone should be able to log into that, and there isn't really an issue with cookies in the same way that there is with the stage 1 form, where you don't have to log into an account for that.
Great, thank you. We've had a question around changes between stage 1 and stage 2. So for example, if another author joins the publication, do we need to report this prior to stage 2? What's the kind of process around changes between stage 1 and stage 2? Tahir, do you want to take that one?
Yes, happy to take that one. As long as the changes to the authors aren't UKRI researchers dropping off, it doesn't really matter. We understand that research is a very collaborative process and that teams can change over time, so new authors may be added. As far as policy compliance with our policy is concerned, we want to ensure that the UKRI fund researcher is affiliated with the publication. So that is what we would be checking. If you feel that the publication has changed considerably and that it may no longer be in scope, then please do get in touch with us and let us know.
Great, thank you. And a question around the cost for third-party clearance. Can we just clarify if that's taken from the maximum amount, or is it in addition to here?
This would be from within the maximum maximum funding limits that UKRI will support.
Great, thank you. We've had another question. I'm not sure if we will be able to answer live, but will we account for changes in currency? So assuming all the claims will be made in pounds, there might be a discrepancy what we paid in the exchange rate. So should we include evidence of what we paid, for example, a screenshot of the finance system, for example? I don't know, Emma, do you have any thoughts on that, or should we follow up on that one?
I think in those cases, if there is a discrepancy, we probably would be okay with a screenshot. We'll have your invoice as well, and your screenshots. You will be claiming an amount from us, so you'll be putting in the amount that you've paid. So there shouldn't be too much of an issue, but you can provide that additional information if you need to.
Great, thank you. So there's a question around if a book is approved at stage 1 and that does not go ahead, does UKRI follow up?
No, we will not follow up, and there's no requirement on our side for you to let us know either. But if you wish to let us know, then you can do so.
Thank you. And another question around the 7-year threshold. So if a publication is delayed between stage 1 and stage 2 and it pushes it out beyond the 7-year threshold, would UKRI still sort of reimburse the university? Tahir, do you want to take that one as well? Sorry to keep pointing at you.
That's all right. I might actually call on Emma for some of this as well, actually. Okay. But just to say, it would depend on the cause for that delay. So if there are EDI circumstances, for example, health considerations or career breaks, we would take that into account, and we would be flexible on that. Similarly, we recognize that there might be challenges in the supply chain for the publisher when they're producing the publication, and that might cause delays as well. So we would query that and to get an understanding of what has caused the delay in publication for it to fall out of the 7-year threshold before we make any decision on that. Emma, did you want to come in on that at all?
No, that's fine. Yeah, but definitely be sympathetic.
Great, thank you. And then another question, I'm not sure if I'm understanding it, I'll just read it out word for word. So is there any distinction regarding the 1st of January 2024 date in terms of signing the contract and the actual publication date? i.e. if an edited collection was published before the end of 2023 and we want to make it OA, can we apply for funding? Tahir?
I'm happy to take that one.
Okay,
so
great.
In the example that is in the question, so if an edited collection was published in 2023, if it was published in 2023, it would not be in scope of the policy because the policy applies from the 1st of January 2024. So we would not be supporting retroactive open access for publications that are outside of the policy in the first place. the fund is only there for immediate open access, so we wouldn't be supporting retroactive open access even for publications that are published after the 1st of January 2024. And just to say that there is a nuance regarding contracting, because we recognise that contracts for books, monographs, collections, etc., are signed many years in advance, and this would include in advance of the policy start date of the 1st of January 2024. So we do have an exemption for those publications. So if the contract doesn't support open access, then we would consider it exempt. If, however, a contract was signed before the start of the policy, so for example, anytime in 2023, and it was for open access, then we would support the open access cost, provided the publication takes place after the start of the policy.
That's great, thank you. But we've actually gone through, as far as I can see, all of the questions that have come in. We don't actually have any open questions. I don't know, Emma and Tahir, if you have any other, know of any other questions that have come in by any other means that we'd like to address.
I would say it is worth looking on our website, on the open access pages. We have shared some videos about TFS that have been produced by UKRI, which tells you a little bit more about the system and the application process and how to manage applications in your organisation. I will find the link and pop that in the chat for everyone.
Lovely, thank you. So I think that sort of brings the webinar to a close. So as we mentioned, we'll be sharing the recording of this. I don't think we'll have any unanswered questions, but we will just go back and check. But if there are any unanswered questions, we will be publishing those on our website as well. And we will share that on our website, and we'll also be emailing all of the attendees to this webinar, so you have that directly as well. So it just remains for me to say thank you to Emma and Tahir, and thank you everyone for joining, and I hope you found this useful demonstration of the stage 2. So thank you very much. Goodbye.